The Treasury Department tells us we have 5 more days before we hit the debt ceiling limit, and we have to start cutting programs and deciding what bills to pay. And if we don't get to the debt ceiling deal, I've got this feeling that we're going to have yet another situation where we're going to earn some more time. So we'll be talking about that, what this means, and what happens now that both the President and the House are home for the holiday. In other news, Ron DeSantis rakes in a record-breaking $8.9 million on his first 24 hours of the campaign. Is some of this astroturfed? Probably. Is he going to win? God, I hope not, but we'll talk about that. And what is happening with that coming forward. John Durham is set to testify on FBI bias in the Trump-Russia probe, as well as a number of other things that the Democrats want to try to hamstring him on next month in front of Congress, so we'll be talking about that and what's happening there. And George Washington University has dropped the nickname the Colonials. It's going to be all of this and more. Happy Memorial Day. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Good evening, everybody. Happy Memorial Day. My name is Jay Edgar. We have got a bunch of stuff to go over here today. It's a bigger show than I thought it was going to be, but still a smaller show than we usually go with, coming on some of these big news days. So we're going to get through all this here today. I don't know that we're going to have to go through every article here. I've got a few buffers up here, but I know we got to talk about the debt ceiling. We've got to talk about Ron DeSantis, because that's going to be what sucks some of the air out of this. There are a couple Supreme Court cases I want to talk about here today. A county in Michigan has become a constitutional sanctuary, which I think is really cool. And even Jill Biden has one of her awkward, "come on, clap you bastards" moments. It's more akin to Jeb, but it's still going to be something we laugh at over here on Contemporary. So, also, this will be the first episode. I've got the record button. I got in the habit of hitting the record button, finally, so that we make sure to go back and do this. But this will be the first episode that I put back up on the audio platform. So I'm going to change the Spotify and change what Podbean is doing for us. I'm going to set all that up. We're gonna get everything going, ready to go. And I'm going to start putting Contemporary on audio. I might miss a few episodes in the beginning, just because of the time frame and everything that goes along with that. But, I mean, with the processor we have on this new computer here, we can typically get these done pretty quick. It's not like a 2-hour process like it was on the old laptop. God rest its soul. I shouldn't even say God rest its soul. The old laptop's actually going. And interestingly enough, this will be the first one that we go back to the audio platform, because this is probably going to be the one that people go back and check back on the most here, because I don't expect to have a big audience tonight. It is Memorial Day weekend. The only reason I'm not floating on a river right now is, number one, the news stops for nobody, and number two, I've got to work tomorrow. So that's what we've got going on with that, but we're going to get right into it. Before we get started, make sure you guys go check out great programming such as The Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, The Porch Boys, and go check out Tweets by Brit, Mr. Behavior, The No Gimmicks Podcast, Silent Caster, and Clown World Chronicles. Go check out all that great programming as we try to bring you a better news experience and culture experience as well. About half the creators I just brought up there are more cultural than news, but as we try to bring you a better experience that's not from people who wear suits that cost more than your house, from the common man for the common man. So go check out all that great programming. Tell them I sent you. And let's get down into what it is we're going to be doing here today. We're going to start, as we always do, with the Dow. Reminder, the Dow is closed on Monday for the holiday. It's a banking holiday, so there will be no trading on the Dow. We'll still have some Bitcoin news. And we'll still talk about, by the time we're on, the futures will be So we'll still be talking a bit about what's happening and what's rolling, because we'll have an idea of what's going to be happening with the debt ceiling. Hopefully by that point, and the investors will know what's going to happen with that. I know that there's some scuttlebutt going on with that right now, but looking at the Dow is at 33,093 at 34. That is up 328.69 US dollars. I'm sorry, 328.69 points, not US dollars. We're not talking about Bitcoin here. Or 1% up on the day. Looks like it spiked at opening trading and stayed steady throughout the day, so not a huge thing to write home about, but I guess the investors are saying, hey, we're actually going to get this done and make this happen. So we will see what happens with this and where this goes. Looking in at your Bitcoin, which is sitting at 26,742 US dollars and 70 US cents. That is up 263.6 US dollars, or another 1% rise. So that's two 1% rises right in a row on articles here. And that's after taking a major spike before settling back down and starting to drop a little bit throughout the day. So those of you who have the Bitcoin, you have won for just a little bit. So that's what we see going on with that. Honestly, I'm surprised I still use that line, the news stops for nobody, because I actually took that from Christensen, and he and I had a falling out a couple years ago, and I actually have not listened to his podcast ever since that falling out. So it's amazing how some of these little pieces of influence still just stick in your memory, though. Hit record should be an emote. Maybe. We'll see if we can find one. I know I want to do tier 2 emotes coming up here at some point in the near future. I want to give people incentive to go up to the second tier of subscription on Twitch. Although it's very appreciated that you've hit the first tier, so thank you guys very much for that. All right, let's look at the gas prices in Madison going into the holiday weekend. Looks like they are holding steady at $3.50. No major spikes coming in before the demand picks up, so that's good at least. We will see what happens on Monday after demand hits. I don't think it's going to go back and rise, but I mean, this is a big travel weekend, so a lot of people are going to be buying gas. We will see what happens with that. Let's grab our financial report from CNBC. Stocks rally on Friday in hopes for a debt ceiling deal. NASDAQ notches fifth straight week of wins from Brian Evans and Alex Herring. Stocks jumped on Friday as traders grew hopeful that lawmakers will reach a deal to raise the U.S. debt ceiling, avoiding a potentially catastrophic default. The Dow climbed 328.69 points, or 1%, to settle at 33,093.34. The S&P gained 1.3 to close at 4205.45, and the NASDAQ advanced 2.2 to 12,975.69. Intel and AMX rose 5.8 and 4.1% respectively to lead the Dow higher. The S&P, tech, and consumer discretionary sectors popped more than 2% each. The NASDAQ notched its fifth straight weekly gain, rising 2.5%. The S&P also posted a one-week advancing 0.3%. The Dow was the laggard this week, losing 1%. Congressional Biden admin negotiators were zeroing in on a deal that would increase the U.S. debt limit for 2 years. House Speaker McCarthy said talks Thursday yielded progress, but added, "We've got to make more progress now." Janet Yellen has warned the U.S. could default as soon as June 1st, although that's changed since this article came out. Economists and Wall Street leaders have also raised concern over the possibility of possibly devastating impact of a U.S. debt default. Once a debt deal is done, markets will have to deal with harsh reality that our Fed is going to kill this economy. Ed Moya, senior market analyst at Owanda, wrote on Friday the end of tightening might not occur until the end of summer, and that means we will probably get bigger rate cuts next year. So we've got that to look at as well. That's what we see coming with that. Let's look at our layoffs report. This is less of a report of layoffs and more of a report of well, maybe something retaliatory here. From Insider, some Meta staff are making up their own tasks or avoiding work as layoffs leave them in anxious and confused limbo, report says. From Pete Syme, Meta staff are making up tasks for themselves or avoiding doing work because of confusion caused by layoffs, Bloomberg reported. On Wednesday, Zuckerberg's company began the third and final part of its latest round of layoffs. Over 4,000 people have already lost their jobs in the recruiting and tech divisions, with a further 5,000 due to be cut in the business division, Insider reported. Zuckerberg announced the second round of layoffs in March after November's first round saw 11,000, or 13% of the company headcount, let go. We are restructuring teams to increase efficiency, the billionaire CEO previously said. He added that he took responsibility for Meta over hiring during the pandemic. But it looks like things aren't going too efficiently at the moment, and that's one thing that you're going to always see. And this is part of the problem when we start to see like the announcement of layoffs coming before they actually do the layoffs. I understand trying to help your people prepare so that they make sure that they go back and look for something else and get something lined up, and maybe you get a few volunteers. So you don't have to just go back and can everybody and put them out onto unemployment. Maybe they go back and they say, hey, I found a better job because I had no idea what your company was doing, or things like that. But that's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario is people look at this, they say, well, I've been a slack ass for the last 3 years. My number is up. And I'm going to take as much company time with me as I can because screw you for being the man, especially in tech. They're doing like the buffer time from Star Trek Lower Decks on steroids. And yeah, it is going to wind up costing Meta big, but I mean, they're doing this because they're being cost big, so I think it's kind of funny, actually. Again, the best thing to do is let everybody go back and prepare, but you still got to prepare for the backlash too, because there's going to be backlash. All right, let's talk about the debt ceiling. Number one, first top story of the day coming from Reuters. More time for debt ceiling deal as U.S. pushes back possible default date. We have the credit rating of a meth head on a Myrtle Beach trailer park. Just saying. That is a very descriptive comment. It paints a picture. This is from Richard Cohen, David Lauder, and Graham Slattery. Democratic and Republican negotiators on Friday got more time to reach a deal to raise the debt ceiling, as Janet Yellen said the government was likely to run out of money to pay its bills on June 5th, 4 days later than she previously predicted. Yellen's announcement gives a bit more breathing room for Democratic President Joe Biden and Republican House of Representatives Speaker Kevin McCarthy to reach an accord to raise the federal government's self-imposed borrowing limit and avert a potentially disastrous default. Negotiators appear to be nearing a deal to lift the limit for 2 years, but remain at odds over whether to stiffen work requirements for some anti-poverty programs. Any agreement would have to win approval in the Republican-controlled House and the Democrat-controlled Senate before Biden could sign it into law, a process that could take more than a week. The two sides have tentatively reached an agreement that will screw the rest of us and put us further into debt and put our children and our children's children further into debt. But the safety net programs remained a sticking point. Mogwai says, why does it feel like ChatGPT and Meta is the origin story of the Borg? It is not, actually. The origin story of the Borg, and by the way, I did this under things that I like back when I read this book. Grab this from Memory Alpha over here. We'll do a side note off here because we never stay on topic here. This is actually the origin story of the Borg. If you like Trek and you like to read, I highly recommend this series too, by the way. Like, it took me a while to get through the last Clancy book that I did, and I like Clancy, but that was a sluggish book. And sometimes it does, because of my work schedule, take me a while to get through a book. But I'm going to tell you right now, I could not put this series down. And when I got done with the first one, I was running to the Kindle store to go buy the second title. So if you want to see the origin story of the Borg, go find Star Trek Destiny. Book 1 is Gods of the Night, and Well, again, maybe if you're not like me and you don't like it, but I'm going to tell you right now, I couldn't put this one down. Back to what we were doing. Let's see. But the safety net programs remained a sticking point. Lead Republican negotiator Garrett Graves said his party would not drop its demand that they require more participants to hold the job. Hell no, not a chance, he told reporters. An admin official briefed on the talks said that they could easily slip into the weekend. Biden and his Democrats have resisted the Republican push to require childless adults under 56 to show that they're working or looking for work in order to qualify for Medicaid, health plan, and the SNAP food assistance program. The Republican proposal would require more participants in those programs to show they're working or looking for work. That would save $120 billion over 10 years, but also force more than 1 million Americans out of the programs, according to the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office. Which, I mean, the goal is to not have people in these programs, isn't it? Maybe I'm completely off base with this, but I would think that if I ran a government, my big thing, maybe I'm looking at this from a logical standpoint, I don't know, maybe that's what my problem is. But if I ran a government, I think my measure of success would be the fact that I would have the vast majority of my workforce work. I mean, Democrats and Republicans both yell and scream when they get the unemployment rate down. They both throw a party, they pop the champagne and it goes, and the confetti all comes out. So getting people off of these programs seems like that would be a win, right? Somebody tell me if I'm off base here. The Republican proposal would require more participants in those programs to show that they're working or looking for work. Yeah, we read that one already. I do not think it's right that you borrow money from China to pay people to stay home that are able-bodied with no dependents, McCarthy told reporters. Democrats say the proposal would only create more red tape that would exclude people who would otherwise qualify. Since when are Democrats shy about red tape? Both Medicaid and SNAP have scaled back in recent months after expanding dramatically during the pinko-pox pandemic. Biden in particular has resisted the work requirements for Medicaid, which covered 85 million Americans as of January. A failure by Congress to raise its self-imposed debt ceiling before June 5th could trigger a default that would shake financial markets and send the U.S. into a deep recession. Newsflash, we're headed for a deep recession anyway. Just so you know. Dual Helix has joined us over on Rumble. Welcome. Wall Street's main indices rose on Friday as investors hoped for progress in the negotiations. A 2-year extension would mean Congress would not need to address the limit again until after the presidential election, which I think is a crying shame. But the upside is if they hit the debt ceiling, and this is part of what frustrates me. There's an article about Republicans trying to stand into the way of this thing right now. If they do carve out and get this debt ceiling to go, we're headed for a deep recession anyway. That's a foregone conclusion. But the hope is that we hit the debt ceiling and default so that our government and Democratic officials can turn around and blame Republicans for the debt ceiling, which would be a fantastic message for Democrats going into the 2024 election. Whereas if you take your lumps, move off to the side a little bit and say, hey, we got some concessions back out of this, but we come to the deal and the debt ceiling is not going to come up for a discussion again until after the presidential election, now you've got Biden presiding over a recession on the defensive going into the 2024 election. Failure by Congress to raise the debt ceiling before June 5th could trigger default, so we've got until then. The deal under consideration would increase funding for the military and veterans care while essentially holding non-defense discretionary spending at current year levels, said the official, who requested anonymity because they're not authorized to speak about internal discussions. Although, again, we know a lot of this already. So, that is what we have for that. The Mogwai says, keep having babies and don't work. Or you could have a bunch of babies, but get yourself a good enough job that you can let your old lady stay home. Yeah, debt ceiling comes back just in time for the midterms. Dual Helix is talking about the Act Blue money laundering. It's just the tip of the iceberg. It probably is. But we got to keep going here. The Democrats, who would benefit from a debt default. Democrats fume at Biden over debt ceiling crisis. Then it gets worse when a reporter reveals Biden's weekend plans. From Chris Enlow over The Blaze. Democrats are lashing out at President Biden for not being strong enough to transcend the advertising that Glenn Beck has to plaster all over every article that he opens up. Let's try this again. Democrats are lashing out at President Biden for not being a strong enough leader in the face of the debt ceiling crisis. Lawmakers are frustrated that Biden is allowing House Speaker McCarthy to shape the narrative about the negotiations, essentially allowing Republicans to win in the court of public opinion as evidenced by polling. Politico spoke with several Democrats who complained about Biden's strategy. A House Democrat speaking anonymously. I'm gonna read this here to myself. I'm gonna see if I can figure out who it is that's saying it. Alright, I think I figured this out. A House Democrat speaking anonymously. It's time to bring the president off the bench, okay, puppy? Or bring someone off the bench. No one's responding on anything. Kevin's consistently on message, okay, puppy? We have the Oval Office. I've never seen anything like it. I don't know if that's who that is, but that is my guess. A Biden ally. The whole apparatus is not pushing back. Our side is just flat-footed. That's Schumer, by the way. Stephen Horsford. They need to use the power of the presidency. I don't buy this argument that public silence helps the negotiation. If Biden is going to speak publicly, it probably won't happen this weekend. He's leaving for Camp David on Friday and will travel to his home in Wilmington on Sunday. The plans led to more outrage among Democrats. Please tell me that's not true, a House Democrat told a Political reporter when informed about Biden's plans. You're going to see a caucus that's so pissed if he's stupid enough to do that. Meanwhile, Jamal Bowman is ratcheting up rhetoric, even calling Republicans terrorists. I'm very frustrated, Bowman said on Thursday. I called on the president to invoke the 14th Amendment, which, by the way, doesn't say what Jamal Bowman thinks that it says. And mint a coin and do not negotiate with these hostage takers. I mean, we don't negotiate with terrorists globally. What are we going to negotiate with the economic terrorists that are the Republican Party? Oh, look, we get to listen to him.
I'm very frustrated. I called on the president to invoke the 14th Amendment and mint a coin and do not negotiate with hostage takers. I mean, we don't negotiate with terrorists globally. Why are we going to negotiate with the economic terrorists here that are the Republican Party?
By the way, we do negotiate with terrorists globally. That's why we're in so deep to the Ukraine right now. Other Democrats have accepted defeat. One House Democrat said, we read this one yesterday. Democrats know they will have to eat a turd sandwich. The Republicans will have to put some Nutella spread on it first. That sounds like some kink shaming right there. The problem for Democrats is that a majority of Americans agree that Congress should cut at least some government spending. If they raise the debt ceiling, that makes Democrats' position not to cut spending untenable and puts Republicans in a good negotiating spot. I don't know whose front page we just landed on here, but we are getting a crowd. Welcome everybody over on Rumble's side. McCarthy said on Friday that negotiators are making progress on a deal. It's likely then that a deal will be reached before the deadline sometime early next month. So that is what we have for that. Let's grab one from the Daily Wire. A little bit more on Jamal Bowman. Democrat Jamal Bowman calls GOP economic terrorist for negotiating over debt ceiling, from Tim Pierce. Jamal Bowman questioned Thursday why President Biden is negotiating over the debt ceiling with GOP lawmakers in the House who Bowman said were terrorists. Pay attention, because that is the rhetoric that is going to continue to come out. That is the rhetoric that will continue to lead them to form a mob, calling the people that don't agree with them the others. Where have we seen this before? Video we watched once already. Secretary Yellen has placed the deadline of June 1st on raising the debt ceiling, even though it's been moved to June 5th. McCarthy says, "I thought we made progress last night. We've got to make more progress now." Biden has faced pressure from his left flank from lawmakers, such as Bowman and others, to stop negotiating with McCarthy and just do it by executive fiat. Pramila Jayapal, chair of the Progressive Caucus, warned Biden against negotiating a bad deal earlier this week. The president, I'm sure he's thinking about the fact that it was a very vibrant, diverse coalition that put him in the White House. Honk, honk. And he's going to need a vibrant, diverse coalition again for 2024, Jayapal said. The watchers are watching, says Dual Helix. Democrats are concerned McCarthy and Republicans may be beating the White House in messaging. They are. And by the way, probably one of the first times I've ever seen something like that happen in my lifetime. I mean, you go into your average major media classroom in college and it's pink hair, septum piercing, a lot of tattoos, a lot of skimpy outfits that say "stop staring at my tits" and things like that. I mean, it's the major media is a very, very liberal apparatus. But realistically, it was made very public right from the beginning that Biden will not negotiate. He will just sit down and he will get whatever he wants, and to hell with everybody else. And the second that he blinked, it was over. Biden might not make it to the top of the ticket in 2024 over this. Realistically, he still has the major advantage of it. Under realistic and statistical terms, he is favored by more than 75% to be the nominee. But in any other situation, an incumbent should be sitting at a 90% chance of being the nominee. So that is where we are at with that. Let's grab one from the Hill. GOP conservatives fume over possible debt ceiling compromises. So this is coming from the other side. From Emily Brooks. Hardline conservatives are fuming over the debt deal compromise being negotiated between Speaker McCarthy and the White House, and they're warned about collapsing GOP support. Or warning, rather, not warned. Bob Good of Virginia said he was concerned about rumors he was hearing about a deal that would raise the debt ceiling higher than what House Republicans proposed without getting more concessions in return. He offered a stark prediction of the consequences. If that were true, that would absolutely collapse the Republican majority for this debt ceiling increase, Good said, adding, rumors that he has heard mean the deal would be less than desirable, I believe, to the majority of Republicans. That's fair. Multiple lawmakers on Thursday told The Hill they'd seen proposals from the negotiations to raise the debt ceiling up to $4 trillion, which they expect would stretch beyond the 2024 elections. Reporters in the New York Times, a former newspaper, and the Washington Post, where democracy goes to die in darkness, on Thursday night, said negotiators were getting closer to a deal that would limit spending more on domestic discretionary spending than defense. They also said negotiators were working out a partial clawback of an $80 billion boost to the IRS for enforcement in order to prevent deeper limitations on the domestic side. Uh-oh, what do we have going on over on the Twitch side? Is David hot? I don't know who David is. Not right now, wait till July. The president's thinking about his bowl of ice cream. The president's thinking about a prepubescent girl, probably. Maybe his daughter. I'm at a Holiday Inn Express and they have free ice cream, 8 to 10, says Silent Caster. I'm expecting Biden here any minute. No, I think 14 is too old for Biden, by the way, Mogwai. He's more into the 9 to 10 range, although he kind of goes all over the place, honestly. And when you really think about it and remember that, he has been accused of sniffing 50, 60-year-old women all the way down to the single digits. It's kind of crazy to watch, actually. Let's see. A source familiar with the negotiation told The Hill that there is no agreement yet on top-line spending levels, nor is there one-on-one or 2-year extension of the debt limit. The deal cannot come together, the source said, until there's an agreement on non-defense discretionary spending versus defense spending. But another source familiar with the negotiation said the two sides are making progress. Though IRS issues are still being negotiated, the White House wants to make sure customer service and enforcement priorities are protected because, well, they're going after you and me, even if there's a small haircut or funding is moved around. Again, one of the things that I'm going to point out with this is the fact that, and I said this at the top article too, people like Bob Good, I understand where you're coming from, but you have to understand compromise. You can't be Democrats right now. Because Democrats came in and said, I want everything that I want and nothing that you want. You can't do that right now as much as... I mean, the time to do that was... There was a time to do that as a Republican, and that was back in February, when this was first taking shape, not now. Right now, again, and this is important, the Biden admin is facing down the fact that they are going to have to preside over a deep recession that could either be milder than '08 by a little bit or put '08 to shame. Going into a presidential election with the hopes, and again, Democrats' best chance for winning and holding the Senate, I think the House is a foregone conclusion for Democrats or for Republicans, but to try to retain the Senate and the presidency in 2024, if you're a Democrat, you're hoping that this crashes because Republicans come back and tank this. Because then you can come back and blame Republicans for the incoming deep recession that is coming no matter what. The recession is happening. It's here. They can move numbers around and make it look nice and funny to hold out and make it not look like a recession for a little bit longer. It is here, you guys. Freight is up. Repairs are down. Job help wanted postings are starting to leave, so. And the best thing that you could do was give up a few of your needs as a Republican. Give up a few of your needs. Take the deal. And let the Biden admin go into 2024 in a recession. Because it will politically pay off in dividends for you. Alright, from the Daily Wire, McCarthy dismisses Freedom Caucus letter urging him to hold the line on spending reforms. From Ben Zisloft, House Speaker McCarthy dismissed a letter from the House Freedom Caucus on Friday, pressing him and other Republicans to hold the line on a debt ceiling agreement with President Biden, which includes spending reforms. The debt ceiling, a statute established by Congress that prevents the government from spending beyond a predetermined national debt limit of $31.4 trillion, exceeded the threshold earlier this year. We know that already. Chip Roy, a member of the House Freedom Caucus, sent a letter on Wednesday that his colleagues should continue to push for a deal, which includes spending reductions and growth caps, the repeal of multiple Biden admin policies, and elevated work requirements for individuals receiving government assistance. While House Republicans are fighting for hardworking Americans, facing a woke, weaponized government at odds with our way of life, Roy contended President Biden and Democrats have been dragging their feet for weeks to fight for rich liberal elitists who want more spending, more government, and more corporate subsidies and less freedom. Chip Roy is not wrong, but again I warn, you don't want to be the one holding the bag when this debt ceiling collapses with an impending recession that is imminent at this point. I like the fact that there are actually Republicans that are trying to curb spending. I like that. Wish they would have done that under Trump, but we can't go back in time and change things. Roy noted the reforms were included in the Limit Save Grow Act, which recently passed the narrowly divided House and waiting for approval in the Senate, which is controlled by Democrats. He asserted that each reform is critical and affirmed that none should be abandoned only to make an agreement on the debt limit. McCarthy said in a press conference on Friday that he's not at all concerned with the letter, even as he needs votes from its members from the House Freedom Caucus in order to pass the legislation. Well, we'll see. I mean, Republicans are very good at coming back and losing at the very last second. Usually from overstretching. We'll see if they do that. From CNN. A little bit more fear porn. They like pushing the fear porn on this one. What happens if the U.S. can't pay all its bills? Oh, they'll pay all their bills with back pay. It's just like the government shutdown. Everything is going to wind up paid. It may not be on time, but it'll wind up paid. Janet Yellen has repeatedly warned the House could default on its obligations as soon as June 1st. We know that. The U.S. has never missed making payments on its bills before. That is a lie. In fact, in the last 45 years, Congress has adjusted the debt ceiling over 60 times. That doesn't make it right. And we have a major flowchart of what could happen here. The U.S. hit its debt ceiling. What happens next? Since 1978, Congress has enacted legislation to suspend or raise the debt ceiling 61 times. Doesn't make it right. Stall. Treasury can stave off a default for a few months with temporary extraordinary measures. Raise. Lawmakers can vote to raise the debt ceiling or suspend. Lawmakers can allow the Treasury to go over the debt ceiling and borrow what it needs to pay the nation's bills. Or, if they default. If the U.S. defaults, it could undermine the faith in the government's ability to pay all of its bills on time, throwing the global economy into chaos. This has never happened before, which is also false before. So it's hard to say what would happen, but here's what experts predict. U.S. hurts its position in the global economy. It's already done that. Payments to 66 million retirees, disabled workers, and others could be delayed. This is the one I want to pay attention to. Recession. The debt default makes a recession. That's, again, already imminent. Stock market nosedive. Yes, please. Paychecks for federal employees in the military, along with payments to federal contractors and veterans, could be delayed. That, again, is partially your own problem for going and working for the federal government. So that's their fear porn, and ABC has its own version of fear porn. Debt ceiling drama hurting American families. We're being treated like numbers. I got news for you. The U.S. government has always seen you as numbers. especially when it comes to election year. From Elizabeth Schulz. Gridlock in Washington over raising the debt ceiling threatens to disrupt payments to millions of Americans who rely on government benefits each month. Seniors, veterans, and Americans living with disabilities could be the first to suffer if the federal government is unable to pay its bills as soon as June 1st. Payments totaling about $100 billion are scheduled to go out on June 1st and June 2nd, with more scheduled throughout the month. Why isn't there government shutdown? Please. I don't need to get that excited on air, Dual Helix. The worst thing they do in government shutdowns is start the government back up. Several people shared with ABC News their growing financial fears as the political stalemate continues. Susan Prohl Meacham, a 64-year-old living in rural Virginia, said she will lose everything if there's no deal to raise the debt limit in time. Well, that's what CNN told her to believe, so... Meacham is disabled and receives $941 Social Security payment on the first day of every month. She said a delay would mean she couldn't afford rent, utilities, or groceries. Do you not have family or a social or a familial safety network somewhere? A community network? Something? In Washington, we're being treated like numbers, or just totally figures on a page. Just like you are every other day. And have been for the last 64 years. We're human beings and we're doing the best we can with what we got, Meacham says. Pamela Gombe builds her entire budget around her $1,168 Social Security disability check delivered the third day of every month. Gombe lives with her granddaughter and told ABC that she struggles to keep her in clothes or shoes. I make sure all the bills are paid first, she said. Food stamps are also critical for Gombe amid persistently high inflation at the grocery store. The government's scheduled to pay out $1 billion in SNAP. On June 12th, Gombe said she worries a stricter work requirement for federal aid programs like food stamps could put her benefits at risk. Why? And I don't know, by the way, Gombe's story, but there are two problems with this. If she is on disability, that would mean that she is not, in fact, able-bodied. That's number one. The benefits that are coming, that are changing, rather, in the Republican plan, only affect able-bodied, usually men, but able-bodied people between the ages of 18 and 56. Number two, the benefit changes in the Republican plan only apply to people without dependents. You have a minor child in your care. You have a dependent. The work requirements of the federal aid programs don't affect you. Without Social Security and SNAP, not only will we be homeless, my goodness, we wouldn't have any money to buy food, she said. Also due on June 1st, $12 billion for veterans benefits in North Carolina. 41-year-old Army veteran Skylie Heinen fears she's among millions of vets whose VA benefits could be delayed. To me, there isn't really a debate. We pay our bills, she said. Army veteran Naveed Shah in Washington, D.C., and Air Force veteran Jacob Thomas in Minneapolis added the uncertainty over U.S. default is already hitting American military families. Even if a deal is reached, everything winds up being okay next week, that still means that right now families and veterans across the country are having to think about what does it mean for me to have to ration my current paycheck or my current disability paycheck, Thomas said, which, by the way, I don't begrudge you this. It sucks. I've had to ration my paycheck before. But also remember that your president said, not even coming to the table. Screw off. Just give me the debt ceiling. Alright. That's enough debt ceiling news for the day. Let's talk about Ron DeSantis. My least favorite human being right now. From the Blaze, DeSantis hauls in a record $8.2 million in 24 hours after launching presidential campaign. From Paul Saka. Florida Man Ron DeSantis hauled in a record $8.2 million in the first 24 hours after launching his presidential campaign. DeSantis was able to garner millions even though his presidential campaign announcement was blemished by temporary technical difficulties at the start of the Twitter Spaces event with Elon Musk, which had nearly 4 million people tune in, which is probably part of the reason they had technical difficulties, if I had to guess. DeSantis easily out-fundraised the past two presidents, who are currently the front-runners for the 2024 race. Honk honk. The money raised by DeSantis tops the previous record, the $6.3 million President Brandon hauled in as the White House candidate during his first 24 hours after his campaign launch in 2019, according to Fox News. Honk honk. Trump raised $9.5 million in his first 6 weeks after announcing his 2024 candidacy in mid-November. The former Republican president also reportedly raised $7 million in the 3 days after his indictment in Manhattan. Never Back Down, the super PAC supporting DeSantis, honk honk, expects to have an overall budget of at least $200 million, including $80 million transferred from an old DeSantis state political account. Top officials with Never Back Down believe they can promote DeSantis as the only candidate to take on and win the cultural fights that are definitional for the Republican Party, according to the New York Times, a former newspaper. The Super PAC is preparing to launch a $100 million voter outreach push so big, it plans to knock on the door of every possible DeSantis voter at least 4 times in New Hampshire, Nevada, and South Carolina, and 5 times in the kickoff Iowa caucus. Guess what? They're not coming here to Wisconsin. Never Back Down plans to hire more than 2,600 field organizers by Labor Day in an attempt to sway Americans to vote DeSantis in the upcoming Republican primary. The organization, which was established in March by Ken Cuccinelli, a former senior official in Trump's admin, has already started hiring recruits in 18 states. You want to know how you get support, Ron DeSantis? Repeal SB 269. Go in there and say, okay, and I know that you love doing executive orders, so this goes right up your alley. Governor executive order. Okay, yeah, I made a mistake when it came to SB 269. It's anti-free speech. I'm going to repeal it. I still won't vote for you. But that would go a long way into fixing the tarnished image that you have. Never Back Down Executive Director Chris Jankowski told The Times, "No one has ever contemplated the scale of this organization or operation, let alone done it. This has just never been dreamed up." So, he's got a lot of money. I'd be interested to see what happens with him in the polls after the announcement, because remember, he's been 40 points behind in the polls, having never announced. And I don't know if he can come back and make it up. Mogwai says, what about putting Harris on the ticket? Would that work with DeSantis? I don't know. Maybe. We've got one from NBC News, which is, I believe, going to be a smear piece, because it's NBC News. DeSantis admin officials solicit campaign cash from lobbyists. From Matt Dixon and Jonathan Allen. Officials who work for Governor DeSantis admin, not his campaign, have been sending text messages to Florida lobbyists soliciting political contributions for DeSantis' presidential bid, a breach of traditional norms that has raised ethical and legal questions and left many here in the state capitol shocked. NBC News reviewed text messages from 4 DeSantis admin officials, including those directly in the governor's office and with leadership positions in the state agencies. They requested the recipient of the message contribute to the governor's campaign through a specific link that appeared to track who is giving as a part of a bundle program. The bottom line is that the admin appears to be keeping tabs on who is giving and are doing it using state staff, a longtime Florida lobbyist said. You're in a prisoner's dilemma. They're going to remain in power. We all understand that. NBC News is not naming the specific staffers who sent the text messages. because it could out the lobbyists who received the messages and shared them, which is, by the way, a rare form of good faith from NBC, who would love to come back out and out all the Trump lobbyists. If this same article was about Donald John Trump, the headline would have the lobbyists' names and the staffers' names. DeSantis' office did not return requests seeking comment, but one admin official acknowledged they are fundraising for the campaign. When will MTG announce, says Silentcaster. I don't think she will. She's too busy impeaching everybody else. Generally, political staffers are charged with raising money for political campaigns, and aides on the official side are walled off from those operations. The legality of the solicitations depends on a series of factors, including whether they were sent on state-owned phones or if they were sent on state property. A longtime Florida election law attorney said that even if the DeSantis aides are fundraising for the campaign in their personal capacity, off the government clock, it still raises ethical questions. At a minimum, even if they're sitting in their home at 9 p.m., using their personal phone and contacting lobbyists that they somehow magically met in their personal capacity and not through their role in the governor's office, it still smells yucky. The attorney said, there's a misuse of public position issue here that's obvious to anybody paying attention. And you'd think they weren't going to be able to dig up dirt on Ron DeSantis. Oh, he can win because he does everything legally. And he didn't have 3 wives, and they can't throw anything at him. Bullshit. Dual Helix says, I'm just waiting for the DeSantis-Trump debate. Not gonna happen.
Look, okay, I'm technically the incumbent, and I'm just too important right now. I'm not gonna entertain anybody with a debate.
Which is a shame, because I would actually like to see that too, but yeah, he's not going. DeSantis will go. One of the entertaining sides of this is I will get to see where DeSantis stands and how he's going to do against the likes of Haley and Asa Hutchinson. Lady Bush and Arkansas Bush. Politico tells us 5 things we know about DeSantis' campaign post-Twitter fiasco. From Sally Goldenberg. DeSantis bounced back from his glitchy launch event with a hefty fundraising haul and a flood of media appearances. Florida man's first 36 hours in the race revealed a lot about what kind of candidate he's trying to be. More conservative than Trump, but cautious of offending the former president's most diehard supporters. He is not cautious of that. And by the way, neither are any of his stands. His stands are the ones that are calling Trump supporters the toothless, overall wearing rubes. I guess forgetting the fact that they actually need these people to win. Asa Hutchinson is a dude. He's a former Arkansas governor. I don't think it was this last term he was. When did he resign? I don't think he immediately preceded Huckabee Sanders, but I think there was one between the two of them. Let me look. We'll look in the research tab. I apologize, I was wrong. He was in office until January 10th of 2023, so yes, he did immediately precede Sarah Huckabee Sanders. I thought there was one between the two of them, but I was incorrect. MTG introduced the articles of impeachment on the DeSantis aides. Mogwai says Brian Williams of NPC is of the opinion if you can't find dirt, just make shit up. Yeah, There's a lot of that going on in public policy. Alright, here are 5 takeaways on the first day plus of the trail for the newest entrant. 1, he's running to Trump's right. Yes, he is trying to court the Evangelocon and trying to turn them away from the Trump people, and that's in their rhetoric too, by the way. Not just from the DeSantis, the staff, but the people that are out there canvassing for DeSantis. Oh look, he's not really a Republican. He was married 3 times. He's a New York liberal. He did shady business dealings. So yes, he is going to try to run to Trump's right and win the country, by the way. Be interested to see how that works out for him. While largely praising Trump's platform, DeSantis touted his signing of 6-week abortion ban that Trump said even Republicans considered too harsh. Excuse me. He questioned the ex-president's support for giving amnesty to 1.8 million undocumented immigrants, an assertion Trump blasted in a press release as a deceptive attempt to distract voters from his presidential campaign launch. And he contrasted himself with Trump over the Pinko Pox, touting his aggressive push to keep schools, businesses, and public spaces in Florida open in the midst of national lockdowns during Trump's presidency. And Trump is trying to attack DeSantis from the left at this point, partially because that's the only avenue that he actually has, given the fact that he can't walk the line down the Evangelocon side, for very obvious reasons. He is wary of antagonizing Trump's hyper-loyal base. That is a lie. Polling shows Trump dominating the Republican field, buoyed by a following that continues to believe his highly editorialized claim, Politico, who has to editorialize every goddamn sentence that they put into everything, that the 2020 election was stolen. For as much as DeSantis was drawing a contrast with Trump, day one was also a demonstration of exactly how careful he is not to upset the base. He doesn't care. Most of our voters obviously appreciate a lot of things President Trump did. I do. I mean, he's been attacking me a lot, but I still give him credit for the things that he did well, especially with the economy in the first 3 years. He avoided attacking Trump's extensive legal troubles and steered clear of personal criticism of his chaotic style. In an interview on the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton show, which replaced Rush Limbaugh, he even said he might pardon people involved in a Trump-inspired selfie fest. Still can't say that word. Instead, DeSantis focused on what he believes is his best pitch, electability, repeatedly implying Trump does not stand a chance of winning in general over the next year. Interesting side note on DeSantis. People say that he's electable and Trump isn't, because either Trump is too ridden with scandals, or they'll honk Trump out of it. And they never quite have a good answer. When you ask them, why won't they honk DeSantis out? Is it because there actually is no honk, or is it because he's one of them? The money hype is real. One of DeSantis' biggest advantages entering the GOP primary is his ability to raise significant sums of money. He has more than $80 million in a state account that can be transferred into a super PAC. He's reported raising at least $33 million to date. And he took in $8.2 million in the first 24 hours after his Twitter launch. Although, with Bidenflation, that could equate to pre-pandemic levels of, I don't know, 4.2 million maybe. And he's sticking with Republican-friendly media. So, that's some of their takeaways from this. Again, I do have a lot of problems with DeSantis. But I can't vote for Trump either at this point. I'm most likely going to stay home on election day. Because it's either have the authoritarian who will govern by executive order if he doesn't get his way, or the person who will go on a spending spree if anybody says that he might lose popularity if he doesn't sign an omnibus. We're screwed either way, folks. Or we can just grab Biden, who will just spend us into oblivion no matter what. That's 3 different ways to be screwed in this country. But the big thing for me with DeSantis, and I've talked about this with other people on Twitter, and Trump people, we talked about this yesterday on Contemporary too. Trump people need to remember this. DeSantis people need to remember this. You guys need each other to win. If you want to oust old Uncle Sniffendiddle, to borrow a line from the R-rated conservative, you guys need to work together and work out your differences really fucking quick. Excuse my language. Because this thing with you guys insulting each other is just going to lead to the sniffer and the cackler taking 4 more years. CNN trying to stir up controversy. And by the way, the mainstream media is trying to make this a bloody primary, so they're telling you the opposite. They want you guys fighting as hard as you can, as viciously as you can. So they're going to put things out like this. DeSantis is going after Trump like never before. To get the DeSantis stands going, yay, our guy, he's going to be a winner and he's going to take on the Democrats, and get the Trump people coming on and saying, oh no, he's attacking our people. Look, we have to go back and attack their people. From Steve Contorno and Kit Marr. Ron DeSantis, now officially a candidate for president, is no longer tiptoeing around former President Trump, nor is he being shy about his plans to flex the powers of the presidency like never before if he wins the White House. DeSantis, whose campaign raised $8.2 million in the first 24 hours, according to a campaign spokesperson, has filled the hours after his botched Twitter launch by taking his message to the familiar comforts of the conservative airwaves, where, in a dozen interviews, he has assailed Trump as fiscally irresponsible, and supporters of amnesty for undocumented immigrants. He said Trump's pinko pox mitigation policies destroyed millions of people's lives, and told Fox News his day one priority would be to fire the former president's handpicked FBI director, Christopher Wray. Trump is a very different guy today than he was when he was running in 15 and 16, DeSantis told Tennessee conservative talk radio host Matt Murphy, adding, I don't know what happened to Trump. The sharpening of attacks against Trump, whose endorsement DeSantis once sought and campaigned on in his 2018 race for governor, comes after months of subtle digs at the former president's stint in the White House. Throughout Trump's 4 years in office, of which DeSantis served almost 2 years in Congress and 2 years as a closely aligned governor, and in the years since, the Florida Republican has never before levied such direct and public criticism of the man he now hopes to supplant as the leader of the GOP. This is just dripping with editorialization, again, trying to pit these two against each other. And maybe not even these two specifically against each other, but their fans against each other. Because when these two camps fight, Democrats win. Let's grab one from The Hill. This will be the last one on DeSantis, by the way. DeSantis says he'll consider pardoning January 6 defendants, including Trump. From Lawrence Vorsa. Florida man said on Thursday that if elected president, he will consider pardoning all the January 6 defendants, including former President Trump, on his first day in office. While Trump is not actually a defendant. On day one, I will have folks that will get together and look at all these cases who people are victims of weaponization or political targeting, and will be aggressive in issuing pardons, DeSantis said on the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton Show podcast when asked about whether he will consider pardoning the January 6 defendants, including Trump, who is currently facing a federal investigation over his role on January 6th. Now see, this is sneaky, by the way. This is a bit of an underhanded attack by DeSantis. I didn't catch it at first when I first found out about it. But once I actually looked into this a little bit, Number one, Trump should have done this like day one before he left. That should have been the first one. But when it comes down to including Trump, which I know Clay and Buck probably put I didn't listen to the clip. I've not listened to the clip yet. I'm actually going to go back and try to find it. But one of the things that was pointed out with, especially like, Marjorie Taylor Greene asked for a pardon, Matt Gaetz asked for a pardon. That's one of the attack lines Democrats like to use against those two individuals. And you only seek a pardon if you're guilty. This is a bit of an underhanded way for DeSantis to say that Trump is guilty or would be found guilty at the very least, when there still has not been any charge levied. There's still an investigation going on. Further pushing his camp to come out and say that Trump is unelectable. I mean, it's good red meat out to the base to say, oh yeah, all those January 6 people, I'll go pardon them. Which again is good, because that's something that should have been done right from the beginning. There are a few people, a handful of people, who got violent, but for the most part, people were waved in, stood around the rotunda, looked around at each other. That's why we can't see Stephen Ignoramus' video anymore. Because our friends in the FBI don't want that to ever be seen. That's why we can't see any of that, because that's the majority of what it was. They went into the rotunda, they looked around and said, okay, what's next? And then when they all got ushered out, they left. They got a good photo op of people entering the Capitol, people being in the Capitol, and a good amount of cell phones pinged against the Capitol's internal Wi-Fi. But this, again, was not an insurrection. So, DeSantis v. Trump. This will get interesting. We'll see what happens there. From the New York Post. Moving on, talking about Durham. John Durham to publicly testify and report detailing FBI bias in Trump-Russia probe, from Stephen Nelson. Special counsel John Durham will testify publicly to Congress next month to describe his final report, detailing the bias in the FBI's investigation of claims that former President Trump colluded with Russia. Durham will appear on June 21st before the House Judiciary Committee. Panel spokesman Russell Dye confirmed to the Post on Friday. Durham's final report, released on May 15th, declared that the Bureau's probe into whether the Trump campaign conspired with the Kremlin to win the 2016 election was seriously flawed, and that the FBI discounted or willfully ignored material information that did not support the narrative of a collusive relationship. The special counsel is likely to take heat from both sides when he appears at the Capitol. Republicans have expressed outrage and confusion about the fact that many key figures in the investigation, including former FBI Director Jim Comey, former FBI Deputy Director Andy McCabe, and former FBI Counterintelligence Chief Peter Strzok, declined to be interviewed by Durham and were not compelled to do so. Democrats, meanwhile, described Durham's report, which recommended no new criminal charges, as proof the Bureau's actions weren't as bad as Trump and his allies say, and are likely to underscore that messaging. No, they were that bad. I'm a bit interested to see what it is that he has to say about this, honestly. If possible, I'm going to see if I don't know when the live streaming is going to be. Probably during the middle of the day, so there'll be no chance of live streaming it at the time, but I kind of want to see what it is that they say. Let's grab one from CNN. Supreme Court rolls back federal safeguards for wetlands under Clean Water Act, from Ariane DeVogue and Devon Cole. The Supreme Court on Thursday cut back the Environmental Protection Agency's ability to regulate wetlands under the Clean Water Act, with a 5-4 majority continuing a trend in which conservative-leaning court has narrowed the reach of the environmental regulations. The Clean Water Act extends only to those wetlands with a continuous surface connection to bodies of water of the United States in their own rights, said Samuel Alito, wrote for the majority. The decision is a victory for Chantel and Michael Sackett, who purchased a vacant lot near Idaho's Priest Lake. 3 years later, they broke ground hoping to build a family home, but soon got entangled in a regulatory dispute. As they began backfilling the property with 1,700 cubic yards of sand and gravel to create a stable grade, the EPA sent them an order halting construction. The wetlands on the Sackett property are distinguishable from any possibly covered waters, Alito wrote, because they're not directly connected to them. Chief Justice Roberts and Clarence Thomas, Neil Gorsuch, and Amy Coney Barrett joined Alito's opinion. Alito said the wetland had to have continuous surface connection with water, making it difficult to determine where the water ends and the wetland begins. Kavanaugh and liberals say majority has rewritten environmental law. Brett Kavanaugh, the person that they thought was going to be the evil rubber stamp, was the only conservative who broke ranks. Writing for himself and liberal justices Sonia Sotomayor, Elena Kagan, and Ketanji Brown Jackson, Kavanaugh agreed the Sackett should prevail in the case at hand because the land should not have been covered by the law, but he would have ruled them on narrower grounds without changing the statutory definition of the issue, waters of the United States. The majority had rewritten the Clean Water Act and ignored the text, as well as 45 years of consistent agency practice, Kavanaugh wrote. Look, there are other problems with this particular situation. Any good realtor should have known that to sell that vacant land for someone to go build a family home on would have given legal issues from the get-go. That, of course, not bringing into question what happened in this decision. I do question sometimes if we have people who are just going out and buying things, or doing things, or making cases, or seeking services, just so they can get a case in front of the Supreme Court. Because everybody involved here should have looked at this and said, hey, wait a second. This is going to cause problems if we go back and try to do this. Oh, look, I got this land for real cheap, and nobody's already built on this before. I wonder why. I do agree that the federal government should have less purview on what's going on here. They should. But this does seem just a bit activistic to me as well. I'm on the fence about this one. From the Star Tribune out of Minneapolis, Supreme Court rules in favor of 94-year-old woman who got nothing when the county took her condo. Why did this make it to the Supreme Court? Eminent domain is a thing, and they should be paying this lady. From Mark Sherman of the Associated Press. A unanimous Supreme Court on Thursday gave the 94-year-old Minneapolis woman a new chance to recoup some of the money after the county kept the entire $40,000 when it sold her condo over a small unpaid tax bill. The justices ruled that Hennepin County, Minnesota violated the constitutional rights of the woman, Geraldine Tyler, by taking her property without paying just compensation. The county had the power to sell Tyler's home to recover the unpaid property taxes, but it could not use the toehold of the tax debt to confiscate more property than was due, John Roberts wrote for the court. Tyler, who now lives in an apartment building for older people, owed $2,300 in unpaid taxes plus interest and penalties, totaling $15,000. When the county took the title to her one-bedroom apartment in 2015, the county said she did nothing to hold on to her one-time residence. The apartment sold the next year. Minnesota is among roughly a dozen states and the D.C. that allowed local jurisdictions to keep the excess of money, according to the Pacific Legal Foundation, a not-for-profit public interest law firm focused on property rights that represented Tyler at the Supreme Court. Good, because that's a practice that needs to stop. Yes, you can turn around, go back, and short sell the property and recoup your losses, but anything that's left over, that has to go back into the property owner's hands. You cannot just take that. I mean, taxation by itself is theft, but that takes theft to a whole new level right there. we may have to have a stand corrected moment for myself. Although, given the fact that he's got the hat on, kind of tells me that this was set up. From the New York Post, Target shopper tears down pride sign as fury over LGBTQ merch spills onto the aisles. Target shoppers fuming over the retailer's LGBTQIRAMIGIXTBYOUAEIE, sometimes Y, merchandise, including tuck-friendly swimwear, have stormed some stores to tear down pride signs. Badger workers didn't even leave a case of Bud Light alongside the offending items. Yeah, this glows. The Minneapolis-based chain, which lost $9 billion in the last week following boycott calls over the LGBTQIRAMIGIXTBYOUAEIRU, sometimes Y, kids' clothing, has announced it will remove some of the offending items, partly due to their workers' safety fears. The online fury spilled over into the aisles, including one MAGA hat wearing provocateur. Of course he walked in a MAGA hat. Why the hell wouldn't he? Who was filmed ripping down a Take Pride sign from a clothing rack of LGBTQIRAMIGIXTBYOUAEIRU, sometimes Y, apparel. Ethan Schmidt, a 24-year-old far-right internet personality who previously made headlines for his off-color remarks, is seen tossing the rainbow-colored sign to the floor before stomping it and kicking it in the 19-second clip. So he did this for clicks, is what you're telling me. Another self-proclaimed patriot and activist, Scott Labido, filmed himself on Wednesday at the Staten Island Target, shouting Memorial Day weekend, where's the display supporting and showing homage to the men and women of the military. There's a couple of little made-in-China pieces of shit here, he adds, pointing to a small 3-shelf section with red, white, and blue paraphernalia. Why? Why would you do this? There were no videos of this before somebody went out and decided to do this for clicks. And now Target can play the victim in this to say, see? Look, they were badgering our people. Support us, the evil right-wingers. You moron. They were on the back foot. They were caving. And then you go back and do this. And now they've got a legitimate grievance. Speaking of people who didn't need to be on the back foot but somehow were anyway, George Washington University drops colonial nickname. From Marin Mogus-Gerby at CNN. George Washington University has changed its school nickname to the Revolutionaries. In a video posted Wednesday on the school's social media account, F. Chuck Todd, host of NBC's Meet the Depressed, and an alumnus of the school made the announcement. Raise high, revolutionaries, Todd said in the video, updating the school's chant. The nickname change came after the criticism from students and the university community who felt the previous name colonials represented colonizers who stole land and resources from indigenous groups, killed or exiled native people, or introduced slavery into the colonies. Oh my god. Really? George Washington University President Mark S. Wrighton said the new name was a community effort. Of course it was. I'm very grateful for the active engagement of our community throughout the development of the new moniker. This process was truly driven by our students, faculty, staff, and alumni. And the result is a moniker that broadly reflects our community and our distinguished and distinguishable George Washington spirit, right and said in a statement. What's going to happen the next time one of these college students comes back out and says, "Oh, a revolutionary. It's like the insurrectionists. It's like the evil Trump. We gotta change it again." Why don't you just avoid the pain and harshness and just call yourself generic university football team? Because it's never going to be enough for these people. Speaking of which, from Fox News, university program linking Christians, Republicans to Nazis granted DHS funds under anti-terror initiative. From Aaron Kliegman. The Biden admin is doling out taxpayer money through an anti-terrorism grant initiative to a university program that has explicitly lumped the Republican Party, as well as Christian and conservative groups, into the same category as Nazis. Well, they've been doing that since the 60s, so I don't know why they would stop now. The only problem that we have now is that they're getting paid for it. Yeah, there's another one. That'd be a good mascot for the George Washington University. Team NPC. The Media Research Center, a conservative watchdog group, obtained the documents through a Freedom of Information Act request, showing a Department of Homeland Security program meant to fight terrorism is funding a group whose work has explicitly targeted the American political right. The MRC outlined its findings in a report, arguing that the group found warrants criminal prosecution. The Terrorism Task Force is engaged in an active effort to demonize and eliminate Christian, conservative, and Republican organizations using federal taxpayer dollars, said Brent Bozell, founder and president of the Media Research Center. What we have uncovered calls for criminal prosecution. The American people need to know those who are abusing their positions. The federal government will be held accountable for their criminal behavior, and yet that's never going to happen. DHS's Targeted Violence and Terrorism Prevention Grant Program provides funds to various public, private, and nonprofit institutions such as universities and county governments to establish or enhance capabilities to prevent targeted violence and terrorism. Grant applications must be based in the U.S. and implement a U.S.-based program. The Biden admin has awarded 80 grants through the TVTP, totaling just under $40 million. Lowest grant was for $85 grand. The highest was over $1.1 million. And the median was about $442 grand. TVTP grant recipients are prohibited from engaging in viewpoint discrimination according to the DHS, and yet they still do. And look, this was started by the Obama administration. Who's shocked? I'm not shocked. From the New York Post. I'll actually back up on this one. Jill Biden awkwardly tells audience, "Thought you might clap," after no round of applause in Jeb Bush-like blunder. First Lady Jill Biden suffered a Jeb Bush "please clap" moment on Thursday when her applause line fell utterly flat during an event in Washington. "I visited red states and blue states, and I found that the common values that unite us are deeper than our divisions," Dr. Biden told an audience at the Reagan Institute Summit on Education in Washington, D.C. After saying the line, the First Lady paused for a moment before reacting with surprise at the spectators' non-reaction. "And, I thought you might clap for that," Dr. Biden said, drawing laughs and applause. Let's watch.
I've visited red states and blue states, and I found that the common values that unite us are deeper than our divisions. And I thought you might clap for that. I've visited red states and blue states, and I found that the common values that unite us are deeper than our divisions.
Please clap.
And I thought you might clap for that.
It's just getting sad at this point. I want to do some more research in this one. I'm going to skip this one here, and we'll finish off the last one here from M Live out of Michigan. Ottawa County becomes constitutional county. From Michael Kranz. Ottawa County is now a constitutional county. The new designation was approved Tuesday, May 23rd, by a 9-1 vote of the Ottawa County Board of Commissioners. Commissioner Doug Zylstra was the sole no vote. Commissioner Roger Bergman was absent. The board heard a little more than 5 hours of public comment prior to the vote, with a majority of the 102 residents who spoke being opposed to the constitutional county resolution. The passage of the resolution, however, was met with resounding applause. While the resolution is largely symbolic, the board is now resolved to not use any funds or resources on enforcing any law or rule that restricts the rights of any law-abiding citizen affirmed by the U.S. Constitution, or aid any state or federal agency in infringing or restricting those rights. Based. The resolution doesn't outline what constitutes an infringement or restriction of constitutional rights. It also doesn't point to any specific rules or law, proposed or otherwise, that the county will no longer use funds or other resources to enforce. Based. You do have to have some definition. Like when Missouri became a Second Amendment sanctuary state, they actually had a definition of what that meant. That they wouldn't use any state funds to assist the federal agents in coming out and doing a unconstitutional gun grab. So yeah, you kind of have to have a definition there, otherwise this is basically just a symbolic move. But it is a step in the right direction. We do need to spend a lot less time wondering what the federal government's going to do to us, and worry more about our localities and our communities, and yes, even our counties. Clean your own house first, before we go back to try to clean up the rest of the country, as I always say. And with that, we are done with our news for the day, but the last thing we do on Friday is we look at our Twitter trending. So let me go grab the Explore page here. We'll figure out what's happening there, and see what Twitter thinks we should be talking about. It's typically very, very vapid stuff, but it's kind of entertaining to see the difference in what the news looks like versus what Twitter trending looks like. SmackDown is trending, as it always is on Fridays. Raquel and Shotzi beat Io and Bayley after a weird finish, but Io was complaining to Bayley afterwards on SmackDown. Oh, that's not going to go over well. White Hoods. That's not going to go over well. I don't recognize any of these wrestlers. I think there are a few people that I used to watch when I was watching wrestling when I was a kid that are still wrestling, but for the most part it's over. What the hell is she wearing? No idea. But that is your SmackDown trend. Trend number 2, Scotty. Why is Scotty trending today? Michael Jordan was a horrible basketball player before I showed up, says Scottie Pippen. That's delusional. That's right. So apparently Scottie Pippen has been running his mouth about fellow basketball players. I know nothing about basketball, NBA basketball, because that was one of the few that I didn't really watch when I was younger. I was more of a football fan when I was younger. I got into racing a little bit when I was in high school and college. And then when I moved to Boston, it was all baseball. Still liking football, of course. But I know the names Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. And Michael Jordan, he was one of the best. That I do know. Looks like we have got a little bit going on over the Rumble side. Why does Abu Dhabi own all of Chicago's parking meters? Yeah, I talked about that when that was new. That was an old article. TFFN Network, of course, over here, saying things that I'm not going to say on YouTube. Mostly things that I don't believe in, also. Let's see, what else do we have here? Gen Loss Warehouse. What is this, I wonder? Can't even believe to describe the shock that ran down my spine at this moment. What is this? Is this K-pop? Is that what I'm seeing here? I know nothing about K-pop. That was a big thing, because we used to do Twitter trending on Tuesdays when we did the morning show. I know nothing about K-pop, but that trended all the goddamn time. I know absolutely nothing about it. But apparently there's some really, really weird stuff going on here. Okay. We looked at that. Tim Anderson for MLB is trending. Let's look at something hopefully a little bit more normal here. I'm cracking up at Deja giving Tim Anderson's wife all the content to build an infidelity case against him when she's ready to file for a divorce. Deja, you can't be mad at Bria for being Bria Anderson, and Bria's smart. When he gets that new $20 million deal, file and take it. What sort of Real Hollywood Housewives bullshit is this? One thing I've seen time and time again is a rich man getting primary custody over his children because their mother won't shut up. He has them being raised by their wives. Tim Anderson's baby mama is playing a dangerous game. Apparently somebody's getting a divorce. Somebody, I have no idea who it is. I don't know. Alright, the last one before we head out of here for the day. Juan Soto. Ooh, that was vicious. Did it go foul? Is that why he was so mad? Into the second deck. I mean, he put that up there. Look at that thing go, but just that bat flip. I wish the Red Sox wouldn't have gone woke. I love baseball. I do. But I'm a big Red Sox fan, and you know, when they're going back and doing things like BLM against, you know, pointing out towards the Mass Pike from Fenway, I can't give them my support and money anymore. But to see a meat-covered robot like that launch one out into the second deck like that, that's entertainment. It's a slow game, but you do get the entertainment of just watching that thing fly. But that is our Twitter trending for the night. We're going to head out of here for the day. We had a really big crowd over on Rumble tonight. I don't know what happened. I don't know where I got promoted from, but whoever promoted me, thank you. I'm pretty pumped about that. There were well over 140 people watching at one point. I don't think we peaked 150, but yeah, I was pretty pumped about that. So let's get one last look over the chat here. Dual Helix waiting to cook his pizza for another 10 minutes because of the 3 times the electricity cost. I can't believe that there are people out there, like the companies that take advantage like that. And I think we use the same energy company too. So, that is what we have for that. Let's get one last look over at the main chat. Silentcaster says, I think Trump does a good enough job by himself getting the two camps to fight. That is fair. That's not to say the media doesn't egg this things on, but this is a war Trump is capable of not fueling, and he's done so. So it's just CNN playing into their game. Yeah, there's that aspect of it too. All right, let's head out of here. Let's finish up. I want you guys to go out and start barbecuing and floating down rivers and drinking beers, although not Bud Light. I want you guys to have a fantastic weekend. In fact, we will go out with a fantastic weekend with the outro music. Alright, so thanks everybody who came by and chatted, lurked, and talked in the live chat. It's been a great night. A lot of new people in here. Not a lot of new chats, but a lot of new people in here. So definitely glad to see everybody who came by. Hope a few of you stuck around for a little bit after this. And we do this every night at 6 p.m. So come back and join us here Monday for more news, more headlines, and more contemporary. Where are we going to go raid? Let's go find somebody to raid. I don't even know if I have rating people watching over on Twitch. I don't know. I'm still going to take my channel over there, so who are we going to go to? So, who are we going to go to? That's me. I hear my voice. We don't want to do that yet. Let's do... Miracle's playing Fallout 3. I like Fallout 3. I think we're going to go do that. And it's her first time, too, so... No spoilers if you follow me over there, but, yeah, let's go over that. Let's do that one here. So, with that, we're going to head out of here for the night. Thank you, everybody who came by and chatted in the live chat. Everybody who came by and hung out. It's a great time. We will see you here on Monday for more news, more headlines, and more contemporary. Definitely looking forward to seeing more of that and hanging out with some of you guys some more. Take care. Have fun. Grab some dinner. See your family. Find a river to go float down. And have a fantastic Memorial Day weekend. And we will see you here next time for more news, more headlines, and more contemporary. And until then, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.